In Module 2.2, the last one, we talked about free market capitalism and where wages came from in a general sense. In this module, I want to sort of zoom in on an individual job. Let's just look at warehouse jobs in your metro marketplace, or driving truck jobs in your metro marketplace. Clearly, there are a lot of people making local deliveries. There are a lot of people working in warehouses all around the airport, the warehouse districts of your metro area. And you'll recall in the last module that I talked about, if you did a quick and dirty survey, you'd start to find out that there was a range or a zone for a given job. It looks something like this, where the average wage we're going to call 100. We'd find that, so that's the 50th percentile company would pay $100 or 100% of a given average wage. And then we'd find that probably 2/3 of all the employers would pay within plus or minus 15% of that wage. So to make my math easy, a job pays $10 an hour. 15% of that would be $11.50, would kick us up to the 115th percentile. Or somebody would try to pay $8.50, and that would take us down to a lower percentile. What we really want to focus, though, on is what happens if we want to get to 120% of the going wage all the way up to 150%, because FedEx and UPS are paying their drivers and their warehouse people those kind of wages. How are we going to increase our productivity to get to that level is the big question. You know, there are different ways of doing it. Imagine if we had 10 people in a warehouse and we took the 2 least productive people. Not saying that they, couldn't do better if we gave them a chance. Let's just be simplistic and sort of, heartless here and say, all right, let's can the 2 least productive people and say to the 8 people, do the same work that these fellows were, and we're going to give you their wages. In other words, we're going to pay the same wages for the warehouse. We're just going to divide it by 8 instead of 10. So the average guy just went up 20%. He's now getting 120% of the going wage for doing that job. And in theory, it might work if the other 2 guys were so bad that they didn't show up, or if they didn't do anything, or worse, if they showed up and tried to do stuff, they made errors. And so there's multiple times the cost of just doing it right the first time. That might work. But that still is not going to get us to 150% where we're not working harder. How do we do that? So I want to look at a number of sort of experiments or responsibilities we can build into a job, like in the warehouse, to, as UPS and FedEx have done, to get the productivity and the wages up to the 150% strata. First of all, let's imagine if we said, look, if we're going to pay a higher wage, we have higher expectations. We expect people to get here a few minutes early and work steadily all day long. And when they take breaks, they come back from their breaks. They don't abuse that, because what we're going to do if we put you on your honor is we're going to get rid of the babysitters who sort of make sure you check in on time and you get back from breaks and so forth, because the babysitters are overhead. And if we get rid of the babysitters, we can give you the babysitters' wages built into your job because you're being more responsible. Second thing is, if we start paying higher wages, we are not going to have as much turnover as we used to, because people are saying, the grass isn't greener, this is pretty good. And if we have less turnover, then the people who show up know how to do it. They don't have to go through 1 month, 2 months, 6 months of kind of making errors, trial and error, to sort of figure out how to do it right at the customer's expense. We have to incur repeat hiring, training, screening kinds of costs. So maybe for the whole group, productivity goes up another 5% just because turnover dropped. Then we start to rethink our service processes. We sort of flowchart how stuff flows through the warehouse, and we find out where the failure points are and the bottlenecks are and where the error points are. And we say, hey, what's going on there? And we look a little closer, and we sort of rethink our systems to make them a little smarter, a little bit more goof-proof, help us to be better at what we're doing. So productivity goes up another 10%. Then, because we start to do everything right the first time, we don't have the correction costs, so that means we can do more additional work, which supports higher productivity by maybe another 10%. I'm sort of making these percentages up as we go. If error costs drop, we're going to say we're going to get rid of the inspectors. In other words, we expect individuals to be responsible enough to do their own inspection or do it right the first time. So then we'll give you those wages because we have less inspection overhead. And you're going to manage yourselves. You may have a supervisor, but it's a lead team working kind of person as opposed to somebody running around with a whistle and a whip and that sort of stuff. Then we're going to say, you know what, we need to cross-train at all the different jobs because we have surge problems. All of a sudden, 3 truckloads of A-plus items, fast-moving items, show up at our back dock. If we can receive that all today, put in the computer tomorrow, when phones start ringing, we'll actually have higher fill rates, higher average order sizes, better customer satisfaction, as opposed to we'll ship some now and some later, creating twice the transactional cost if we just could have received it on a timely basis. But that means everybody has to be able to receive. So that gives inherent flexibility, productivity to the group. And then because we do have 0 errors, we do have 100% on-time delivery, because we do have higher fill rates because of same-day receiving, our service starts to be better, and our customers start to give us more and more of their business. Our average order size grows. We even start to get last looking a little bit more because our service is so good. Yeah, our price is a little higher, but our total procurement cost, which we'll look at in later modules, drops for the customer. So that gives us a big bump. All these things start to add up to 195% of the going productivity, or if you remember, there was one slide where we computed that there was $50,000 of gross margin dollars generated annually per warm body. If we could wave a wand and get that figure to double, so our value added or gross margin dollar per warm body was 100,000, then we could pay 150% going wages and we still would make good profits too. So these are the kinds of productivity plays that we're going to have to work on if we're going to make it happen. So I think in summary, I've got to ask the big questions. Who's interested out there in viewer land in trying to figure out how to rethink, re-engineer, redesign your job so that it can support 120% of the going wage for that kind of situation, or in some cases like that warehouse scenario for FedEx and UPS, 150%. I'm not guaranteeing that your company will or can do this. It's largely up to you, because there are these 2 iron laws. Free market economics sets the zone for the wages, and employers have to pay any more than what the zone says. But that doesn't mean you can't all work together to create premium productivity to support premium wages for your job niche. Secondly, as a happy byproduct, you're giving perfect do it right the first time service, because do it right the first time is the low cost, high morale, and high service value to the customer way of doing business. And so, you may be laying bricks, but if you lay the best bricks in town, you got your pride. And then how many people would say, all right, I want to be responsible for helping to do all these things, because if everybody's got to buy into this if it's going to happen. So we'll continue to pursue this over the rest of the video modules, because when you really think about it, what's your next best alternative? To stay where you are and doing what you're doing. And if you say, well, I'd like to go work for a better ecosystem, there's so few of them out there, it's better, in a sense, just to say, you know what, let's invent our own. Thanks. Assuming you've been watching modules 2.1, 2, and 3, I think the net take-home at this point is Bruce is talking about some sort of revolution here. Or maybe it's like Thomas Jefferson penning the Declaration of Independence to send it to the King of England. Like, hey, we want to be free and pursuit of happiness and all this great stuff we haven't really enjoyed before. So I want to take a little time out here and talk about really the new employment contract that I'm advocating. I assume that many of you are kind of hooked on some of the ideas of, oh yeah, I'd like premium wages, I'd like to have pride in being best service, etc. But maybe some of you are a little bit wary that, your frontliners particularly wary that, wait a minute, is this one of those, yeah, I want to go to heaven, but I'm going to have to die for it tomorrow kind of things, as opposed to, well, I don't want to die for it. How can I get there in some reasonable, not totally pain-free, but, low pain kind of way. And on the flip side, management's thinking, well, wait a minute, Bruce has promised them pie in the sky, how are we going to finance this? So I'd like to review kind of the old, employment contract that most companies really have, as opposed to the new one I'm advocating in this next slide. First of all, the old deal, most companies tend to be top-down, financial management driven, and the idea is, if we hire people cheap and work them hard, then we're going to make more money than if we pay more and let them screw off. But the point is that if we pretend to pay them, actually they pretend to work. Maybe the new deal is, all right, we're going to pay a lot more, but we expect to get a lot more, and we expect people to be responsible in co-creating the productivity that's going to equal and exceed the increases in wages so the company can make more profits too. Everybody's going to win here. In the old deal, we found, or managers often said, well, I can't delegate as much as I would like to people because, first of all, they're not doing that good at the current job they are because I'm not paying them to do it anyway. So I have to do more myself. I'm feeling very overburdened. I need to hire an assistant to help me supervise, do more top-down kind of action. Under the new deal, the idea is, wait a minute, if I'm going to pay more, I'm going to expect more, I'm not going to allow reverse delegation. When somebody comes to my office and says, hey boss, we're going to run out of boxes in the warehouse, I'm not going to say, tell me all about it, let me solve your problem for you and do your job. I'm going to say, well, I guess the objective here is don't run out of boxes. Go figure it out. You're kind of a big boy now. I'm paying bigger wages. I expect more responsibility. And if you can't do it at this high wage, we have lots of other able-bodied people who love a chance at doing the job. So there's that kind of peer pressure, not just on the team, but from people who would like to be on the team that sort of make people say, boy, I really want to hang on this job. And then a third thing is, instead of being financial top-down, we're thinking about how everybody is going to improve profit power, because financial numbers, turns out, are only symptoms. And if we try to manage the symptoms, we're still not addressing the root cause of where does profit power come from. And we'll spend a lot of time talking about where does profit power come from and how we improve it. So at any rate, we now say, all right, we're proposing a new contract. The problem is, how do we get from here to there? What kind of a trip is this? And what are the steps that we're going to have to take to get to the promised land?